The Project Gutenberg ebook of Rizal's own story of his life. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, you will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. Title: Rizal's own story of his life. Author: José Rizal. Editor: Austin Craig. Release date: March 8, 2015. Ebook number 48438. Language: English. Credits: produced by Jeroen Hellingman and the online distributed proofreading team at http://www.pgdp.net for Project Gutenberg. Start of the Project Gutenberg ebook. Rizal's own story of his life. Rizal sketched by himself in Berlin when he was 25 years old. Physicians then told him that he had consumption, but with care and fresh air, he soon became well again. Rizal's Hymn to Labor. Words by José Rizal, arranged from Ches Derbyshire's translation, lines in different order. Tune of The Wearing of the Green. Rizal's Maria Clara's Lullaby. Words by José Rizal, Ches Derbyshire's translation, music by Juan Hernandez. The author at 14. Rizal's own story of his life in the history of mankind. There are names which of themselves signify achievements. They call forth reverence and remind us of greatness. Signature on the manuscript of the novel El Filibusterismo, edited by Austin Craig, Rizal, research professor in the University of the Philippines. National Book Company, Manila, 1918. Copyright 1918 by Austin Craig. Registered in the Philippine Islands. Rizal's painting of his sister Saturnina, afterwards Mrs. Manuel Hidalgo, printed in the United States of America, Philippine Islands, Press of E.C. McCullough & Co., Manila, P.I. Acknowledgements. Drive. W.W. Marquardt suggested this book. Miss Josephine Craig advised and assisted in the selections. Honorable C.E. Yeater read and criticized the original manuscript. Miss M.W. Sproul revised the translations. Dean Francisco Benitez acted as pedagogical advisor. Miss Gertrude McVen simplified the language for primary school use. Mr. John C. Howe adapted and arranged the music. Mr. Frederick H. Stevens planned the makeup and, in spite of wartime difficulties, provided the materials needed. Mr. Ches Akvist supervised the production. Mr. C. H. Naranha, who, in 1897, in his Hong Kong magazine Odds and Ends, first published Rizal's farewell poem My Last Thought, was the careful and obliging proofreader. Assistant Insular Architect Juan Arellano, a colleague of the editor on the Dapitan Rizal National Park Committee, designed the Sampaguita decorations. Mr. A. Garcia achieved creditable illustrations out of poorly preserved photographs whose historical accuracy has not been impaired by the slightest embellishment. And the entire establishment of Messrs. E.C. McCullough & Company printers, pressmen, and bookbinders labored zealously and enthusiastically to do credit to the imprint, made in Manila, the work of Filipinos. The memory of Rizal is kept alive in many ways. 1. A province near Manila bears his name. 2. The anniversary of his death is a public holiday. 3. A memorial school has been built by the insular government in his native town. 4. His home in exile has been made a national park. 5. The first destroyer of the future Philippine Navy is named Rizal. 6. Rizal's portrait appears on the 2-peso bill. 7. Rizal's portrait appears on the 2-centavo postage stamp. A 2-centavo postage stamp, a 2-peso bill, a 2-centavo stamped envelope, a Philippine postcard. Illustrations page. Rizal's pencil sketch of himself. 1. Rizal at 14. 4. Rizal's painting of his sister Saturnina. 6. Rizal's portrait on Philippine postage and money. 8. Rizal's home, Kalamba 12 Rizal's mother and 2 of his sisters 16 clay model of Dog and Cayman Combat 17 where Rizal went to school in Binan 18 Rizal Monument, Binan 24 Santa Rosa Gate, on Binan Kalamba Road 26 model of a Dapitan woman at work. 28 Rizal's uncle 29 Rizal's uncle's home in Binan 30 Guardia Civil Soldier 31 Rizal's mother 33 Rizal's father 34 one of Rizal's teachers, terracotta bust by Rizal 36 Padre Sanchez, Rizal's favorite teacher in the Ateneo 37 carving of the Sacred Heart, made by Rizal in the Ateneo 44 wooden bust of Rizal's father 45 Rizal at 1848 Rizal's sacrifice of his life 57 Professor Burgos 58 The Lakeshore at Kalamba 60 A Manila schoolgirl, drawn by Rizal 62 Rizal in Paris 64 Rizal at 30 66 Crayon. Portrait of Rizal's cousin Leonor 70, Dapitan Plaza and Town Hall 80 Wooden medallion of Mrs. José Rizal 84 Chalk pipe head, Rizal's last modeling 86 Rizal at 2790 Manila skyline, sketched by Rizal 92 Rizal at 22 104 Rizal at 24 106 Rizal at 26 108 Rizal at 28, from a group picture 110 Rizal at 28, profile 114 Rizal Mausoleum, Luneta, Manila 118 Nalimi Tangeri manuscript cover design, by Rizal 120 El Filibusterismo manuscript cover, lettered by Rizal 121 portrait of Rizal at time of finishing. El Filibusterismo 121 Los Banos house where El Filibusterismo was begun, drawn by Rizal 121 Diploma of Merit awarded Rizal for Allegory The Council of the Gods 123 Silver Pen Prize won by Rizal for Poem to Philippine Youth 125 Alcohol Lamp in which Rizal hid poem My Last Thought 125 Contents Autographic quotation from Rizal. Page Rizal's song Hymn to Labor 2 Rizal's song Maria Clara's Lullaby 3 My Boyhood 13 My First Reading Lesson 49 My Childhood Impressions 59 The Spanish Schools of My Boyhood 61 The Turkey That Caused the Kalamba Land Trouble 65 From Japan to England Across America 69 My Deportation to Dapitan 73 Advice to a Nephew 81 Filipino Proverbs 83 Filipino Puzzles 84 Rizal's Don'ts 85 Poem Hymn to Labor 87 Memory Gems from Rizal's Writings 91 Marayang Makiling 93 Not by Rizal The Memory of Rizal 8 Rizal Chronology 101 A Reading List 119 Philippine National Hymn, by Jose Palma, 126 Song, Hail, Philippines, by H. C. Theobald, 128 Rizal Mercado Home, Kalamba. Here José Rizal was born. The family lost this building, along with most of their other property, in the land troubles. Governor-General Weyler sent soldiers to drive them out, though the first court had decided in their favor and an appeal to the Supreme Court had not yet been heard. Later, the upper part of the building was rebuilt. Rizal's own story My Boyhood José Rizal wrote the first 3 chapters in 1878. He was 17 years old at that time. Chapter I My Birth and Earliest Years in Kalamba I was born on Wednesday, the 19th of June, 1861. It was a few days before the full of the moon. I found myself in a village. I had some slight notions of the morning sun and of my parents. That is as much as I can recall of my baby days. The training which I received from my earliest infancy is perhaps what formed my habits. I can recall clearly my first gloomy nights, passed on the azotea of our house. They seem as yesterday. They were nights filled with the poetry of sadness and seem near now because at present my days are so sad. On moonlight nights, I took my supper on the azotea. My nurse, who was very fond of me, used to threaten to leave me to a terrible but imaginary being like the bogey of the Europeans if I did not eat. I had 9 sisters and a brother. Our father was a model parent. He gave us the education which was suitable in a family neither rich nor poor. He was thrifty. By careful saving, he was able to build a stone house. He also bought another house, and he put up a nipa cottage on our plot of irrigated ground. The cottage was shaded by bananas and trees. At nightfall, my mother had us all say our prayers together. Then we would go to the azotea or to a window to enjoy the moonlight, and my nurse would tell us stories. Sometimes sad and sometimes gay, nurse's stories were always oriental in their imagination. In these stories, dead people, gold, and plants on which diamonds grew were all mixed together. When I was 4 years of age, my little sister Concha died, and for the first time I cried because of love and sorrow. Till then I had shed tears only for my own faults, which my loving, prudent mother well knew how to correct. I learned to write in my own village. My father looked after my education. He paid an old man, who had been his schoolmate, to teach me the first steps in Latin. This teacher lived in our house till he died, 5 months later. He had been in almost perfect health, and it was at the moment of death that he received extreme unction. Mrs. Rizal Mercado and her 2 daughters, Saturnina, the eldest, and Trinidad, then a baby in June of 1868, I went to Manila with my father. That was just after the birth of Trinidad, the 3rd sister younger than myself. We went in a casco which turned out to be a clumsy boat. I shall not try to tell how happy I was at each new stop on the banks of the Pasig. Beside this same river, a few years later, I was to be very sad. We went to Cainta, Taytay, and Antipolo, and then to Manila. In Santa Ana I visited my eldest sister, Saturnina, who at that time was a student in La Concordia College. Then I returned to my village and remained until 1870. A dog and cayman combat modeled at Dapitan in 1894. The dog was Rizal's own, and looked like one that had been his boyhood companion at Calamba, where Rizal went to school in Binan, site of Master Justiniano's house, which burned down many years ago. Chapter 2 My schooling in Binan. Binan is a town about 1.5 hours drive from my own town, Calamba. My father was born in Binan, and he wished me to go there to continue the study of Latin, which I had just begun. He sent me over one Sunday in the care of my brother. The parting from my family was tearful on the side of my parents and my sisters, but I was 9 years old and managed to hide my own tears. We reached Binan at nightfall. We went to an aunt's house where I was to live. When the moon came up, a cousin took me around the town. Binan appeared to me large and wealthy, but neither attractive nor cheerful. My brother left me after he presented me to the schoolmaster, who, it seemed, had been his own teacher. The schoolmaster was a tall, thin man with a long neck and a sharp nose. His body leaned slightly forward. He wore a shirt of sinamay that had been woven by the deft fingers of Batangas women. He knew Latin and Spanish grammar by heart, but his severity, I believe now, was too great. This is all that I remember of him. His classroom was in his own house, only some 30 meters from my aunt's home. When I entered the classroom for the first time, he said to me, Do you speak Spanish?" "A little, sir," I answered. "Do you know Latin?" "A little, sir," I again answered. Because of these answers, the teacher's son, who was the worst boy in the class, began to make fun of me. He was some years my elder and was taller than I, yet we had a tussle. Somehow or other, I don't know how, I got the better of him. I bent him down over the class benches. Then I let him loose, having hurt only his pride. After this, possibly because of my small size, my schoolmates thought me a clever wrestler. On going from the class, one boy challenged me. He offered me my hold, but I lost and came near breaking my head on the sidewalk. I do not want to take up time with telling about the beatings I got, nor shall I attempt to say how it hurt when I received the first ruler blow on my hand. I used to win in the competitions, for no one happened to be better than I. I made the most of these successes. But in spite of the reputation I had of being a good boy, rare were the days in which my teacher did not call me up to receive 5 or 6 blows on the hand. When I went out with my companions, they jokingly called me nicknames. But individually they used to be so kind to me that I thought little of their teasings. A few of them were very good and always treated me well. Among these few was a second cousin of mine. Later, some of them were my schoolmates in Manila, and then it became my turn to tease. Near the house of my teacher, Justiniano Aquin Cruz, lived his father-in-law, generally called Juancho. Juancho was an aged artist who let me help him with his paintings. I had already such a liking for this art that our schoolmates called José Guevara, another pupil, and myself the class painters. Chapter 3: My daily life in Binan. Many of us lived in the same house. There were my aunt, 2 cousins, and 3 half-cousins. My aunt was a very old lady, over 70. She used to sit on the floor and read the Bible in Tagalog. One cousin was a maiden lady who liked very much to go to confession and to do penances. The other cousin, her brother, was a widower. Rizal Monument, Binan. It stands in front of Rizal's maternal grandfather's house. One of the half-cousins was something of a tomboy. She was quick to anger but frank and true-hearted. At times, we young folks played in the street at night. Our elders did not permit us to play in the house. The tomboy was 2 or 3 years older than I and taught me games. She always treated me as if I were her brother. Santa Rosa Gate, on the road from Calamba to Binan. My manner of life was simple. I heard Mass at 4 if there were a service so early, or studied my lessons at that hour and went to Mass afterwards. Then I went out in the yard and looked for mabelos. Then came breakfast, which generally consisted of a plate of rice and 2 dried sardines. There was class work till 10 o'clock, and after lunch a study period. In the afternoon, there was school from 2 o'clock until 5. Next, there would be play with my cousins for a while. Study and perhaps painting took up the remainder of the afternoon. By and by came supper, 1 or 2 plates of rice with a fish called ayunjan. In the evening we had prayers, and then, if it was moonlight, a cousin and I would play in the street with the others. Fortunately, I was never ill while away from home. From time to time, I went to my own village. How long the trip seemed going, and how short coming back. Many things happened which it would be tiresome to read. Finally, there came a letter from my sister Saturnina which announced that the steamer Talim would stop for me on a certain day. I said goodbye to my numerous friends and teacher. To my teacher, I expressed my sadness in leaving and my gratitude for his instruction. Although he had punished me frequently, he did so, I now think, out of the kindness of his heart, and his heart was heavy when he did it. Statuette modeled in Dapitan from a street scene. I left Binan on Saturday afternoon, the 17th of December, 1870. I was then 9 years old. For the first time, I saw what a steamer really was. It seemed to me most beautiful and in every way admirable. But I heard my cousin, who was with me, make remarks to the bunkero that were not complimentary to her speed. I was the only passenger from Binan. 2 sailors put my baggage into a cabin. Then I went to inspect it. I thought I was going to be without a cabin mate, but a Frenchman, Arturo Camps, who was a friend of my father, looked after me. The journey seemed very long, but finally we arrived at Calamba. Oh, how glad I was to see the shore. At once I wanted to jump into the first banca. A deckhand took me in his arms and put me into the captain's boat. Then the Frenchman came and 4 sailors rowed us ashore. It is impossible to describe my joy when I saw a servant waiting for us with a carriage. I jumped in and soon found myself again in our home, happy in the love of my family. Here end my recollections of that period of mingled sadness and gladness, in which, for the first time, I came to know anybody of foreign birth. Chapter 4 The Injustice Done My Mother. This chapter and the next one, Rizal wrote in 1879. At that time he was 18 years old. Some days after my return to Calamba, my parents decided that I should remain, and that later, I should go to Manila. I wanted to study with a teacher of the town, even though I could learn no more than multiplication, so I entered the village school. Rizal's uncle. He was educated at a Calcutta English school. He was a friend of the liberal Spanish leaders of his time. Rizal's uncle inherited this home in Binan from Rizal's grandfather. Once the largest dwelling in Binan, it is now a cinematograph and the home of 2 families. The Rizal monument stands in front of it. Guardia Civil Soldier. At this time, an uncle of mine, Don José Alberto, returned from Europe. He found that during his absence, his wife had left his home and abandoned her children. The poor man anxiously sought his wife and, at my mother's earnest request, he took her back. They went to live in Binan. Only a few days later the ungrateful woman plotted with a Guardia Civil officer who was a friend of ours. She accused her husband of poisoning her and charged that my mother was an accomplice. On this charge, the alcalde sent my mother to prison. I do not like to tell of the deep grief which we all, 9 sisters and brothers, felt. Our mother's arrest, we knew, was unjust. The men who arrested her pretended to be friends and had often been our guests. Ever since then, child though I was, I have distrusted friendship. We learned later that our mother, away from us all and along in years, was ill. From the first, the alcalde believed the accusation. He was unfair in every way and treated my mother rudely, even brutally. Finally, he persuaded her to confess to what they wished by promising to set her free and to let her see her children. What mother could resist that? What mother would not sacrifice life itself for her children? They terrified and deceived my mother as they would have any other mother. They threatened to condemn her if she did not say what they wished. She submitted to the will of her enemies and lost her spirit. The case became involved until the same alcalde asked pardon for her. But this was only when the matter was before the Supreme Court. He asked for the pardon because he was sorry for what he had done. Such was his meanness that I felt afraid of him. Attorneys Francisco de Marcaida and Manuel Masagan, Manila's leading lawyers, defended my mother and they finally succeeded in having her acquitted. They proved her innocence to her judges, her accusers, and her hosts of enemies. But after how much delay, after 2.5 years. Rizal's mother. Meanwhile my father decided to send me to Manila with my brother Paciano. I was to take the entrance examinations for the secondary course in the Ateneo Municipal. I arrived in Manila on June 10, 1872. I found out for the first time what examinations were like. My examinations were in Christian doctrine, arithmetic, and reading, in San Juan de Letran College. They gave me a passing mark and I returned to my home. A few days later came the celebration of the town festival, after which I went to Manila. But even then, I felt that unhappiness was in store for me. Rizal's father Rizal's signature, from a letter written in London when 28 years of age. Chapter VA student in Manila. As I had hoped, I was taken to the Jesuit priest at that time in charge of the Ateneo Municipal. He was Father Magin Fernando. At first he was unwilling to admit me. One reason was I had come late. Other reasons were that I did not seem strong and was very small for my age. I was then 11. But later, Dr. Manuel Zariz Burgos, a nephew of the ill-fated Padre Burgos, spoke in my favor, and Father Fernando admitted me. I dressed myself in the uniform like the other students, wearing a white coat or Americana and a necktie, and entered the chapel of the Jesuit fathers to hear Mass. What fervent prayers did I address to God! An Ateneo professor modeled by Rizal in Dapitan from memory. This bust won a gold medal at the St. Louis Exposition. In 1904. After Mass, I went to the classroom. There I saw a number of boys, Spanish, mestizos and natives, and a Jesuit teacher. Father José Beck, the teacher, was a tall man, thin and somewhat stooping, but quick in his movements. His face was thin and pale, yet lively. His eyes were small and sunken, his nose sharp and Grecian. His thin lips curved downwards. He was a little eccentric, sometimes being out of humor and intolerant, at other times amusing himself by playing like a child. Some of my schoolmates were interesting enough to warrant mentioning them by name. Florencio Gavino Oliva, a young man from my own province, had great talent, but he did not work steadily. The same thing was true of Moises Santiago, a mathematician and a penman. It was also true of Gonzalo Manzano, who then held the position of Roman emperor. Rizal's favorite teacher in the Ateneo. Father Sanchez visited Rizal in his exile in Dapitan, and helped him start a school for the Dapitan boys. In Jesuit colleges they divide the boys into two groups or empires, one Roman and the other Greek. These two empires are always at war. The boys of one empire always want to outdo those of the other empire in all kinds of contests. Each group has a leader who is called emperor. The emperor wins his place by doing the best work and standing the highest of anyone in his group. I was put at the end of the line. I could scarcely speak Spanish, but I already understood it. After the religious exercises, I went out and found my brother waiting to take me to my lodgings, which were about 25 minutes' walk from the college. My brother did not wish to leave me in the walled city, which seemed very gloomy to me. I lodged in a small house on Calle Caraballo, near an estero. The house consisted of a dining room, a sala, a bedroom, and a kitchen. An awning covered the small space between the door and the steps. My landlady was a maiden lady called Titi, who owed our family 300 pesos. Her mother, a good old woman, lived with her. There were besides a crazy woman, quite harmless, and some Spanish mestizos in the house. I must not speak of my sufferings, or of my troubles and pleasures. I shall record only what happened in school during that year. By the end of the first week, I was going up in the class. Then I began to spend the siesta time studying at Santa Isabel College. For this, I paid 3 pesos a month. I went there with Pastor Milana, a boy of my own age. A month later, I was emperor. How pleased I was when I won my first prize, a religious picture. In the first quarter I gained another prize, with the grade excellent. After that I did not care to apply myself. I had foolishly become dissatisfied because of something my teacher said. Unfortunately, this continued until the end of the year and I gained only second place in all my subjects. This gave me the grade of excellent but without any prize. I spent the vacation at home and went with my eldest sister, Neneing, to Tanawan, for the town festival. This was in 1873. But our pleasure was marred by the fact that our mother was not with us. I had gone alone to see my mother without first sending word either to her or to my father. This was at the close of the term in which I held second place. I thought with what joy I would surprise her. Instead, we wept in each other's arms. We had not seen each other for more than a year. After vacation was over, I returned to Manila and enrolled in the second year. Then I hunted lodgings in the walled city. It was too tiring to live so far away. I found a place at 6 Calle Magallanes in the house of an elderly widow, Dona Pipe. Her daughter, also a widow, lived with her. The name of the daughter was Dona Encarnacion, and her 4 sons were Jose, Rafael, Ignacio, and Ramon. Nothing worth telling happened that year. My professor was the same as in the previous year, but I had different schoolmates. Among them I found 3 who had been with me in Binan. At the end of this year, I won a medal and returned to my town. I again went alone to visit my mother in prison. Like another Joseph, I prophesied to her from a dream that her release would take place within 3 months. This prediction happened to come true. At this time, I began to devote my leisure to reading novels. Years before, I had read one, but it was not with any great interest. Imagine how a romantic youngster of 12 would delight in the Count of Monte Cristo. Under the pretext that I should have to study general history, I persuaded my father to buy me a set of Cesar Cantu y Dios histories. I gained much by reading them. In spite of my only half applying myself and of my indifferent Spanish, I was able to win prizes in the quarterly examinations. I should have gained the medal if I had not made some slips in Spanish, which I spoke very poorly. This gave the place to a Spanish lad who spoke his mother tongue better than I could. Thus, then, I finished my 3rd year. When I next returned to Manila, I found my former landlady's house full. I had to take a room in the house with my brother, Paciano Mercado, in company with a boy from my town named Quintero. My life was not so free as formerly, for I was under close supervision. The regular hours, however, were better for me. I prayed and played with my landlord's children. A portrait of General Paciano Rizal Mercado should appear here, but he has never had his picture taken. In September 1896, he was cruelly tortured in an unsuccessful endeavor to get him to sign a statement that his brother was the leader of the rebellion. Rizal's last letter, from the Fort Santiago death cell, tells how much the younger brother owed to the elder. My dear brother, now that I am about to die, it is to you that I write my last letter. I am thinking of how you worked to give me my career. I believe that I have tried not to lose my time. I know how much you have suffered for my sake. I assure you, brother, that I die innocent of this crime of rebellion. Carving of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, made by Rizal while in the Ateneo. Even then he was the hero of his schoolmates, and the little image was long kept, as here shown, on the door of the students' dormitory. In 1896 his former teachers removed it and took it to him in the death cell at Fort Santiago. A little later my mother was proved innocent and she was set free. She came to embrace me as soon as she was free. After the vacation, in that memorable year of my mother's release, I again had my lodgings in the walled city. The house was in Calle Solana and belonged to a priest. My mother had not wanted me to return to Manila, saying that I already had sufficient education. Did she have a presentiment of what was going to happen to me? Can it be that a mother's heart gives her double vision? Bust of his father, made by Rizal when 14. My future profession was still unsettled. My father wanted me to study metaphysics, so I enrolled in that course. But my interest was so slight that I did not even buy a copy of the textbook. A former schoolmate, who had finished his course 3 months before, was my only intimate friend. He lived in the same street as I did. My companions in the house were from Batangas and had only recently arrived in Manila. On Sundays and other holidays, this friend used to call for me and we would spend the day at my great-aunt's house in Trizo. My aunt knew his father. When my youngest sister entered La Concordia College, I used to visit her, too, on the holidays. Another friend had a sister in the same school, so we could go together. I made a pencil sketch of his sister from a photograph which she lent me. On December 8th, the festival of La Concordia, some other students and I went to the college. It was a fine day and the building was gay with decorations of banners, lanterns, and flowers. Rizal as a painter. This portrait is from a group picture of students who lived in the house of Rizal's cousin, Antonio Rivera. Rizal was then 18 years old. Shortly after that, I went home for the Christmas holidays. On the same steamer, was a Calamba girl who had been a pupil in Santa Catalina College for nearly 5 years. Her father was with her. We were well acquainted but her schooling had made her bashful. She kept her back to me while we talked. To help her pass the time, I asked about her school and studies but I got hardly more than yes and no in answer. She seemed to have almost, if not entirely, forgotten her Tagalog. When I walked into our house in Calamba, my mother at first did not recognize me. The sad cause was that she had almost lost her sight. My sisters greeted me joyfully and I could read their welcome in their smiling faces. But my father, who seemed to be the most pleased of all, said least. The next day we were expecting friends from Manila to arrive, on their way to Lipa. But the steamer landed its passengers at Binan because of a storm. So I saddled a pony and rode over there to meet them. My horse proved to be a good traveler and when I got back to Calamba I rode on, by the Los Banos road, to our sugar mill. There I tied the horse by the roadside and for a time watched the water flowing through the irrigation ditch. Its swiftness reminded me of how rapidly my days were going by. I am now 20 years old and have the satisfaction of remembering that in the crises of my life I have not followed my own pleasure. I have always tried to live by my principles and to do the heavy duties which I have undertaken. My first reading lesson this tells how he himself became an intelligent student. It was probably written while he was studying the schools of Saxony. These were the models for America so that the present educational system here is along the lines he advocated. As a child he had written a poem, By Education the Fatherland Gains in Splendor. I remember the time when I had not seen any other river than the one near my town. It was as clear as crystal, and joyous, too, as it ran on its course. But it was shaded by bamboos whose boughs bent to every breeze as if always complaining. That was my only world. It was bounded at the back by the blue mountains of my province. It was bounded in front by the white surface of the lake. The lake was as smooth as a mirror. Graceful sails were to be seen everywhere on it. At that age, stories pleased me greatly and, with all my soul, I believed whatever was in the books. There were good reasons why I should. My parents told me to be very careful of my books. They urged me to read and understand them. But they punished me for the least lie. My first recollection of reciting my letters reaches back to my babyhood. I must have been very little then, for when they rubbed the floor of our house with banana leaves I almost fell down. I slipped on the polished surface as beginners in skating do on ice. It took great effort for me to climb into a chair. I went downstairs step by step. I clung to each round of the baluster. In our house, as in all others in the town, kerosene oil was unknown. I had never seen a lamp in our town, nor a carriage on our streets. Yet I thought Calamba was a very gay and lively town. One night, all the family, except my mother and myself, went to bed early. Why, I do not know, but we two remained sitting alone. The candles had already been put out. They had been blown out in their globes by means of a curved tube of tin. That tube seemed to me the finest and most wonderful plaything in the world. The room was dimly lighted by a single light of coconut oil. In all Filipino homes such a light burns through the night. It goes out just at daybreak to awaken people by its spluttering. My mother was teaching me to read in a Spanish reader called The Children's Friend. This was quite a rare book and an old copy. It had lost its cover and my sister had cleverly made a new one. She had fastened a sheet of thick blue paper over the back and then covered it with a piece of cloth. This night my mother became impatient with hearing me read so poorly. I did not understand Spanish and so I could not read with expression. She took the book from me. First she scolded me for drawing funny pictures on its pages. Then she told me to listen and she began to read. When her sight was good, she read very well. She could recite well, and she understood verse making, too. Many times during Christmas vacations, my mother corrected my poetical compositions, and she always made valuable criticisms. I listened to her, full of childish enthusiasm. I marveled at the nice-sounding phrases which she read from those same pages. The phrases she read so easily stopped me at every breath. Perhaps I grew tired of listening to sounds that had no meaning for me. Perhaps I lacked self-control. Anyway, I paid little attention to the reading. I was watching the cheerful flame. About it, some little moths were circling in playful flights. By chance, too, I yawned. My mother soon noticed that I was not interested. She stopped reading. Then she said to me, "I am going to read you a very pretty story. Now pay attention." On hearing the word story I at once opened my eyes wide. The word story promised something new and wonderful. I watched my mother while she turned the leaves of the book, as if she were looking for something. Then I settled down to listen. I was full of curiosity and wonder. I had never even dreamed that there were stories in the old book which I read without understanding. My mother began to read me the fable of the young moth and the old one. She translated it into Tagalog a little at a time. My attention increased from the first sentence. I looked toward the light and fixed my gaze on the moths which were circling around it. The story could not have been better timed. My mother repeated the warning of the old moth. She dwelt upon it and directed it to me. I heard her, but it is a curious thing that the light seemed to me each time more beautiful, the flame more attractive. I really envied the fortune of the insects. They frolicked so joyously in its enchanting splendor that the ones which had fallen and been drowned in the oil did not cause me any dread. My mother kept on reading and I listened breathlessly. The fate of the two insects interested me greatly. The flame rolled its golden tongue to one side and a moth which this movement had singed fell into the oil, fluttered for a time and then became quiet. That became for me a great event. A curious change came over me which I have always noticed in myself whenever anything has stirred my feelings. The flame and the moth seemed to go farther away and my mother's voice sounded strange and uncanny. I did not notice when she ended the fable. All my attention was fixed on the fate of the insect. I watched it with my whole soul. I gave to it my every thought. It had died a martyr to its illusions. As she put me to bed, my mother said, "See that you do not behave like the young moth. Don't become disobedient, or you may get burnt as it did." I do not know whether I answered or not. I don't know whether I promised anything or whether I cried. But I do remember that it was a long time before I fell asleep. The story revealed to me things until then unknown. Moths no longer were, for me, insignificant insects. Moths talked, they knew how to warn. They advised, just like my mother. The light seemed to me more beautiful. It had grown more dazzling and more attractive. I knew why the moths circled the flame. The advice and warnings sounded feebly in my ears. What I thought of most was the death of the heedless moth. But in the depth of my heart I did not blame it. My mother's care had not had quite the result she intended. Years have passed since then. The child has become a man. He has crossed the most famous rivers of other countries. He has studied beside their broad streams. He has crossed seas and oceans. He has climbed mountains much higher than the Maki Ling of his native province, up to perpetual snow. He has received from experience bitter lessons, much more bitter than that sweet teaching which his mother gave him. Yet, in spite of all, the man still keeps the heart of a child. He still thinks that light is the most beautiful thing in creation, and that to sacrifice one's life for it is worthwhile. Rizal's sacrifice of his life, on the Luneta, Manila, December 30, 1896. He is now buried, in the imposing Rizal Mausoleum, near the scene of his execution. Professor José Burgos. He was unjustly executed in 1872. Of him, Rizal wrote, "He awakened my intellect and made me understand goodness and justice." His farewell words I shall always remember. "I have tried to pass on to you what I received from my teachers. Do you now do the same for those who come after you." My childhood impressions, one of numerous rough drafts evidently written for practice. Published as Mi Primer Recuerdo, in El Renacimiento, Manila, February 2, 1908. I spent many hours of my childhood down on the shore of the lake, Laguna de Bay. I was thinking of what was beyond. I was dreaming of what might be over on the other side of the waves. Almost every day, in our town, we saw the Guardia Civil lieutenant caning and injuring some unarmed and inoffensive villager. The villager's only fault was that while at a distance he had not taken off his hat and made his bow. The alcalde treated the poor villagers in the same way whenever he visited us. We saw no restraint put upon brutality. Acts of violence and other excesses were committed daily. The officers whose duty it was to protect the people and keep the public peace were the real outlaws. Against such lawbreakers, our authorities were powerless. I asked myself if, in the lands which lay across the lake, the people lived in this same way. I wondered if there they tortured any countryman with hard and cruel whips merely on suspicion. Did they there respect the home? Or over yonder also, in order to live in peace, would one have to bribe tyrants? The lake, Laguna de Bay, from the Calamba shore. Rizal's brother, General Paciano Rizal Mercado, cleared this region of Spanish soldiers after Dewey's victory and then told the people to go to work. He set the example by again becoming a farmer. The Spanish schools of my boyhood, from the introduction which Dr. Rizal put to his Spanish version of an article on the transliteration of Tagalog. His advocacy of the English style used in other Malay countries as more akin to the genius of Filipino dialects was considered extremely unpatriotic by most Spaniards. Pencil sketch of a Manila schoolgirl. You perhaps attended a village Spanish school to learn your letters. Possibly, you have had to teach the letters in Spanish to others smaller than yourself. In either case, you must have noticed what I have, that children find great difficulty in mastering certain syllables. These are ca, ce, ci, co, ga, ge, gua, gui, etc. It is because Filipino children do not understand the reasons for such irregularities. Nor do they know the cause for the changes in value of the sounds of certain consonants. Rizal, when he was with Dr. Pardo de Tavera, in Paris, in 1889. In the old times, blows fell like rain. Many pupils were whipped every day. Sometimes the schoolmaster broke the ferule and sometimes he broke the children's hands. The first pages of their primers fell to pieces from long and hard use. The children cried. Even the monitors had to suffer at times. Yet those syllables which cost the children so many tears are of no use to them. Those syllables are necessary only in the learning of Spanish, which language in my time only 3 boys in 1,000 ever really learned. These 3 learned it in Manila, by hearing Spanish spoken, and by committing to memory book after book. I often wondered what was the use of learning it at all when in the end one spoke only Tagalog. But I kept my wonder to myself. I felt that to try to make reforms in the Philippines at that time would be to embark on a stormy voyage. After I grew up, I had to write letters in Tagalog. I was shocked at my ignorance of its spelling. I was surprised, too, to find the same word spelled differently in the different works which I consulted. This proved to me how foolish it was to try to write Tagalog in the Spanish way. The spelling in use today by all Filipino scholars is a great improvement over the old style. I want to place the credit for this change where it belongs. These improvements are due to the studies in Tagalog of Dr. T. H. Pardo de Tavera alone. I have only been one of the most zealous champions of the change from the Spanish style. The turkey that caused the Calambalan trouble this account was given Captain Carnicero, the Spanish commander of the Dapitan district where Rizal was in exile, in 1892. My father was a friend of the owners of the Calamba estate. He was intimate, too, with the manager in charge of the plantation. Frequently, important visitors came to the plantation house. Then the manager asked my father for whatever he needed. He very often asked for a turkey, and my father gladly gave it to him. The poultry yard at our house was always full of turkeys because my father was a fancier of these fowls. Rizal at 30. Dr. Blumentritt considered this the best likeness among all the portraits of Rizal, but one season there came some epidemic and almost all the turkeys died. Only a few pairs, which were being kept for breeding, were left. Just at this time the manager one day sent for the customary turkey. Naturally my father had to tell the messenger that he had no turkeys to spare, because the greater part of them had died. This reply made the manager furiously angry. He wound up his abuse by saying, "You will pay for this in the end." A few days later my father received a note from the manager, saying that he was going to raise the rent on the land which my father occupied. He said the rent would be 1/3 more than father was then paying. The reason for this decision was clear. It was because my father had refused to give the manager the turkey. The proof of this was that no other tenant received any such notice. Father paid this increase on the day set, without a single word of protest, being among the first to pay. But after a few months, there came another note. In it the manager gave notice that the rent would be doubled. This, he said, was because my father was growing rich from the rented land where he had installed machinery for making sugar. My father could not pay this price. Then he was summoned to appear in court, and finally the alcalde ordered him to leave the land. So he lost his houses and machinery, all because of a turkey. From Japan to England, across America, from letters written en route to his friend Mariano Ponce and first published in Manuel Artigas' Biblioteca Nacional Filipina, Manila, June, 1910. Crayon portrait of Rizal's cousin, Leonor Rivera, to whom he was engaged. The drawing was made in 1882, just before he sailed for Spain. During his absence, his letters were kept from her and she was told that Rizal had forgotten her in the gay life of Europe. This was done because her mother's advisers thought Rizal's political ideas made him unsuitable for a husband. Leonor finally consented to the marriage urged upon her instead, and when too late, through Rizal's return in 1887, learned how she had been deceived. She died not long afterwards, of a broken heart, it was said. On February 28, 1888, I arrived in Yokohama. A few moments after reaching the hotel, I received the card of the official in charge at the Spanish legation. I had not even had a chance to brush up when he called. He was very pleasant and offered to assist me in my work. He even invited me to live at the legation, and I accepted. If, at the bottom, there was a desire to watch me, I was not afraid to let them know all about myself. I lived at the legation a little over a month, and traveled in some of the nearby provinces of Japan. At times, I was alone, at others, with the Spanish official himself, or with the interpreter. While there, I learned to speak Japanese, and made a slight study of the Japanese theater. After many offers of employment, which I refused, I sailed at last for America, about April 13th. On the steamer, I met a half-Filipino family, the wife being a mestiza, the daughter of an Englishman named Jackson. They had with them a servant from Pangasinan. The son asked me if I knew Rizal, the author of Nali Me Tangerine. Smiling, I answered that I did, and, as he began to speak well of me, I had to make myself known and say that I was the author. The mother paid me compliments, too. I made the acquaintance of a Japanese who was going to Europe. He had been a prisoner for being a radical and editor of an independent newspaper. As the Japanese spoke only Japanese, I acted as interpreter for him until we arrived in London. During this voyage I was not seasick. I visited the larger cities of America, where I saw splendid buildings. The Americans have magnificent ideals. America is a homeland for the poor who are willing to work. I traveled across America, and saw the majestic cascade of Niagara. I was in New York, the great city, but there everything is new. I went to see some relics of Washington, that great man whom I fear has not his equal in this century. I embarked for Europe on the City of Rome, said to be the second largest steamer in the world. On board, a newspaper was published up to the end of the voyage. I made the acquaintance of many people. They wondered at my taking about with me a foreigner who could not make himself understood. The Europeans and Americans were astonished to see how I got along with him. I could speak to everyone in his own language and understand what he said. My deportation to Dapitan first published in the Biblioteca Nacional Filipina, Manila. The account was secretly sent by Rizal to his friends very shortly after his arrival at his place of exile. The reference to the school is from a letter to Dr. Blumentritt. I arrived in Manila the 26th of June, 1892. It was on a Sunday, at 12 o'clock, noon. A number of carbineers, including a major, met me. A captain and a sergeant of the Guardia Veterana were there in civilian clothes. I disembarked with my luggage, and they inspected it at the custom house. From there, I went to the Orient Hotel. I occupied room number 22, which overlooks the Binondo Church. That afternoon, at 4, I presented myself to His Excellency, Governor-General Despujol. He told me to return at 7 in the evening and I did so. He granted my petition for the liberty of my father, but not for the liberty of my brother and sisters. He told me to return on Wednesday evening at 7:30. From there, I went to see my sisters. First I saw my sister Narcissa, afterwards Nanang, Saturnina. On the following day, Monday, at 6 o'clock in the morning, I was at the railway station, bound for Bulacan and Pampanga. I visited Malolos, San Fernando, and Tarlac. On the return I stopped at Bacolor, reaching Manila on Tuesday at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. 7:30 on Wednesday saw me with His Excellency. But not even then did I get him to revoke the deportation decrees. Still he gave me hope for my sisters. As it was the festival of Saints Peter and Paul, our interview ended at 9:15. I was to present myself on the following day, at the same hour. That day, Thursday, we spoke on unimportant matters. I thanked him for having revoked the order to banish my sisters and told him that my father and brother would come by the first mail steamer. He asked me if I wished to return to Hong Kong and I answered, yes. He told me to come again on Wednesday. Wednesday he asked me if I persisted in my intention of returning to Hong Kong. I told him that I did. After some conversation he said that I had brought political circulars in my baggage. I replied that I had not. He asked me who was the owner of the roll of pillows and petates with my baggage. I said that they belonged to my sister. He told me that because of them he was going to send me to Fort Santiago. Don Ramon Despujol, his nephew and aide, took me in one of the palace carriages. At Fort Santiago Don Enrique Villamer, the commander, received me. He assigned me to an ordinary room containing a bed, a dozen chairs, a table, a washstand, and a mirror. The room had 3 windows. One, without bars, looked out on a court, another had bars, and overlooked the wall and the beach, the third served also as a door and had a padlock. 2 artillerymen were on guard as sentinels. They had orders to fire on anyone who tried to make signs from the beach. I could not talk with anyone except the officer of the guard, and I was not allowed to write. Don Enrique Villamer, the commander of the fort, gave me books from the library. Each day the corporal of the guard proved to be a sergeant. They cleaned the room every morning. For breakfast, I had coffee with milk, a roll, and coffee cake. Lunch was at 12:30, and consisted of 4 courses. Dinner was at 8:30, and was similar to the lunch. Commander Villamer's orderly waited on me. On Thursday, the 14th, about 5:30 or 6 p.m., the nephew notified me that at 10 o'clock that night I should sail for Dapitan. I prepared my baggage, and at 10 was ready, but as no one came to get me, I went to sleep. At 12:15, the aide arrived with the same carriage which had brought me there. By way of the Santa Lucia gate, they took me to the Malecon, where were General Ahumada and some other people. Another aide and 2 of the Guardia Veterana were waiting for me in a boat. The Cebu sailed in the morning at 9. They gave me a good stateroom on the upper deck. Above the doors could be read Chief. Next to my cabin was that of Captain Delgras, who had charge of the party. 10 from each branch of the military service were in the party. There were artillery, infantry of the 70th, 71st, 72nd, 73rd, and 74th regiments, carbineers, cavalry, and engineers, and Guardia Civil. Of artillerymen there were at least 12. We were carrying prisoners loaded with chains, among whom were a sergeant and a corporal, both Europeans. The sergeant was to be shot because he had ordered his superior officer, who had misbehaved while in Mindanao, to be tied up. The soldiers who obeyed orders and tied the officer up were given 20 years imprisonment, and the officer himself was dismissed from the service because he had let them tie him up. I ate in my stateroom, the food being the same as the officers had. I always had a sentinel and a corporal on guard. Every night, Captain Delgras took me for a promenade on deck till 9 o'clock. We passed along the east coast of Mindoro and the west coast of Panay. We came to Dapitan on Sunday, at 7 in the evening. Captain Delgras and 3 artillerymen accompanied me in a boat rowed by 8 sailors. There was a heavy sea. The beach seemed very gloomy. We were in the dark, except for our lantern, which showed a roadway grown up with weeds. In the town we met the governor, or commandant, Captain Ricardo Carnicero. There was also a Spanish ex-exile, and the practicante, Don Cosma. We went to the town hall, which was a large building. My life now is quiet, peaceful, retired and without glory, but I think it is useful too. I teach reading, Spanish, English, mathematics and geometry to the poor but intelligent boys here. Moreover, I teach them to behave like men. I have taught the men how to get a better way of earning their living, and they think I am right. We have begun, and success is crowning our trials. The Plaza of Dapitan, Island of Mindanao. The town hall appears in the lower right-hand corner. Rizal made a raised map of Mindanao Island on the plaza, to teach their home geography to the Dapitan people. The map has been restored by the insular government, and a bronze tablet tells its history advice to a nephew written from Dapitan. Rizal took great interest in the education of his sister's children, and in Germany had made for them a translation into Tagalog of Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales. This he embellished with many appropriate drawings and wrote out very plainly, making a book of 80 pages. I think that I ought to mention to you a slight error which I have noticed in your letter. It is a little error which many in society make. One should not say, I and my sisters greet you, but my sisters and I greet you. Always you have to put yourself last. You should say, Emilio and I, you and I, my friend and I, and so on. For the rest, your letter is well written. In it you express your thoughts clearly. You use only the necessary words, and your spelling is good. Keep on advancing. Learn, and think much about what you learn. Life is a very serious matter. It goes well only for those who have intelligence and heart. To live is to be among men, and to be among men is to strive. But this strife is not a brute-like, selfish struggle, nor with men alone. It is a strife with men, and at the same time with one's own passions. It is a struggle with the proprieties, with errors, with prejudices. It is a never-ending striving, with a smile on the lips and the tears in the heart. On this battlefield, man has no better weapon than his intelligence. He possesses no more force than he has spirit. Bring out your intelligence, then, and improve it. Strengthen and educate yourself that you may be prepared for the struggle. Filipino Proverbs. The Proverbs and the Puzzles were published, with comments here omitted, in True Ebner's Oriental Magazine, London, June and July issues of 1889. Rizal's own English. 1. Low words are stronger than loud words. 2. A petted child is generally naked, i.e. poor. 3. Parents' punishment makes one fat. 4. New king, new fashion. 5. Man promises while in need. 6. He who believes in tales has no mind of his own. 7. The most difficult to rouse from sleep is the man who pretends to be asleep. 8. Too many words, too little work. 9. The sleeping shrimp is carried away by the current. 10. The fish is caught through the mouth. Filipino Puzzles. He carries me, I carry him the shoes. A deep well filled with steel blades the mouth. Mrs. José Rizal. Wood medallion by Rizal of his wife, made at Dapitan. Her maiden name was Josephine Bracken. She was Irish, but had been adopted by an American. Her foster father became blind and, in hope of recovering his sight, went to Dapitan. There Rizal became engaged to Josephine but could not marry her because a political retraction was required of him before the ceremony would be performed. They were finally married in Fort Santiago, half an hour before his execution. Mrs. Rizal gave Speaker Osmina his first lessons in English. She died 5 years after her husband. Rizal's don'ts condensed from the regulations of the Philippine League, Liga Filipino, a cooperative economic society which Rizal organized in Manila just before his deportation, in 1892. Don't gamble. Don't be a drunkard. Don't break the laws. Don't be cruel in any way. Don't be a rabid partisan. Don't be merely a fault-finding critic. Don't put yourself in the way of humiliation. Don't treat anyone with haughtiness or contempt. Don't condemn anyone without first hearing his side. Don't abandon the poor man who has right on his side. Don't forget those who, worthily, have come to want. Don't fail those without means who show application and ability. Don't associate with immoral persons or with persons of bad habits. Don't overlook the value to our country of new machinery and industries. Don't ever cease working for the prosperity and welfare of our native land. A pipe which Rizal made, of chalk, in Fort Santiago for his last Christmas gift to his father hymn to labor, written expressly for the exercises celebrating the erection of the pueblo of Lipa, Batangas, into a villa, but received too late to be used on that occasion. Translation by Charles Derbyshire. Men, now the east with light is reddening, and to our fields and tasks we fare, by the toil of man sustaining life and home and country there. Though the earth be hard and stubborn, and the sun unpitying glow, for our country and our homes love an easy way will show. Chorus, for his country in peace, for his country in war, let the Filipino work, let him live, let him die. Matrons, go then joyous to your labor, while the wife awaits you here, with the children learning from her to hold truth and country dear. When night brings you weary homeward, may peace and joy await you there, but if fate unkindly frown, she your stubborn task will share. Chorus, for his country in peace, for his country in war, let the Filipino work, let him live, let him die. Maidens, hail to labor. Blessed be it, for it brings our country wealth, may we ever hold it sacred, 'tis our country's life and health. If the youth would win our favor by his work his faith be shown, only he who toils and struggles will support and keep his own. Chorus, for his country in peace, for his country in war, let the Filipino work, let him live, let him die. Boys, show us then the way to labor, the road you ope to guide our feet, so that when our country calls us, we your task may then complete, and the old men then will bless us, saying, they are worthy of their sires, for the dead are honored most by sons whom true worth inspires. Chorus, for his country in peace, for his country in war, let the Filipino work, let him live, let him die. Rizal at 27. From a Hong Kong photo. Taken just after Governor General Terrero, who admired the author of Nali Me Tangere, had advised Rizal to leave the islands to escape enemies so powerful that even his protection might not ensure safety. Rizal had dared to help the Calamba tenants to answer fully and truthfully inquiries which the government had made regarding their landlord's memory gems. From Rizal's writings, without liberty there is no light. One evil does not correct another. My dearest wish is the happiness of my country. It is a useless life which is not consecrated to a great idea. A man keeps his independence while he holds to his own way of thinking. If our country is ever to be free, it will not be through vice and crime. Knowledge is the heritage of mankind, but only the courageous inherit it. It is better to honor a good man in life than to worship him after he is dead. Resignation is not always a virtue, it is a crime when it encourages tyrants. In the flames of war those who suffer most are the defenseless and the innocent. I have worked for the good of my native land, I have consecrated my life to the welfare of others. We need criticism to keep us awake. It makes us see our weaknesses so that we may correct them. There are three ways in which one may accompany the course of progress: in front of, beside, or behind it. Where are the young men who will consecrate their best years, their ambitions, and their enthusiasms to the welfare of their native land? Manila skyline. Rizal's last view of the city as the steamer, in 1882, was taking him to Spain. Drawn on shipboard Marayang Makiling, this story is a favorite in my town. Marayang Makiling was a young woman. She lived somewhere on the beautiful mountain Makiling, between Laguna Province and Tayaba Province. No one knew just where or how she lived. Some said she lived in a beautiful palace surrounded by gardens. Others said she lived in a poor hut made of nipa and bamboo. Maria was tall and graceful. Her color was a clear, pure brown, kayumangang kalagatan, as the Tagalogs say. Her eyes were big and black. Her hair was long and thick. Her hands and feet were small and delicate. She was a fairy-like creature born under the moonbeams of the Philippines. She flitted in and out among the woods of Makiling. She was the ruling spirit of the mountain, but she seldom came within sight of man. Hunters sometimes saw Maria on the night of Good Friday when they went out to trap deer. She would be standing motionless on the edge of some great cliff. Her long hair floated in the wind. She sometimes approached them. She would salute them gravely, then pass on and disappear among the shadows of the trees. They never dared to question her, to follow her, or to watch her. She liked best to appear after a storm. Then she would scurry over the fields bringing back life to the fallen plants, and setting everything to rights. The trees straightened up their wind-blown trunks. The streams went back into their beds. All signs of the storm disappeared as she passed. Marayang Makiling had a very good heart. She used to lend the poor country folk clothing or jewels for weddings, baptisms, and feast days. All she asked in return was a pullet as white as milk. It had to be a dumalaga, that is, one that had never laid an egg. Sometimes she appeared as a simple country girl and helped the poor old women to pick up firewood. Then she would slip gold nuggets, coins and jewels into their bundles of wood. A hunter was one day chasing a wild boar through the tall grass and thorny bushes. Suddenly he came to a hut in which the animal hid. A beautiful young woman came out and said, "The wild boar belongs to me. You have done wrong to chase it, but I see that you are very tired. Your arms and legs are covered with blood. Come in and eat. Then you may go on your way." The man was charmed by the beauty of the young woman. He went in and ate everything she offered him. But he was not able to speak a single word. Before the hunter left, the young woman gave him some pieces of ginger. She told him to give them to his wife for her cooking. The hunter thanked her and put the roots inside the crown of his broad hat. On the way home his hat felt heavy. So he took out a number of the pieces and threw them away. He was surprised and sorry the next day when his wife discovered that what they had taken to be ginger was solid gold. The supposed roots were bright as rays of sunshine. But Marayang Makiling was not always kind and generous to the hunters. Sometimes she punished them. One afternoon 2 hunters were coming down the mountain, carrying some wild boars and deer which they had killed during the day. They met an old woman who begged them to give her a quarter. They thought that was too much to give, so they refused. The old woman said that she would go and tell the mistress of those animals, and she left them. This threat made the hunters laugh heartily. When night had fallen and the 2 were near the plain, they heard a distant shout, very distant, as though it came from the top of the mountain, "There they go, oh oh oh." Then another even more distant cry replied, "There they go, oh oh oh." That cry surprised both the hunters, who could not account for it. On hearing it, the dogs stuck up their ears. They uttered low growls and drew nearer to their masters. In a few minutes the same cry was heard again, this time from the mountainside. On hearing it, the dogs thrust their tails between their legs and came close to their masters. The men stared at each other without saying a word. They were astonished that the one who uttered the cry could travel so far in such a short time. When they reached the plain, the fearful cry was heard again. This time, it was so clear and distinct that both looked back. In the moonlight, they could see two strange, gigantic shapes coming down the mountain at full speed. Both hunters ran as fast as they could with such heavy loads. Still the strange creatures came nearer. The men, coming to a spring called Bukel, threw down their burdens, and climbed a tree, and the dogs fled toward the town. The monsters came up, and in a few seconds devoured the wild boars and deer and went back toward the mountain. Only then, did the hunters recover. The more courageous took aim, but his gun missed fire and the monsters escaped. No one ever knew whether Mariang Makiling had parents, brothers, and sisters, or other kin. Such persons spring up naturally, like the stones the Tagalogs call mutya. No one ever knew her real name. She was simply called Maria. No one ever saw her enter the town or take part in any religious ceremony. She remained ever the same. The 5 or 6 generations that knew her always saw her young, fresh, sprightly, and pure. For many years now no one has seen her on Makiling. Her vapor figure no longer wanders through the deep valleys. It no longer hovers over the waterfall on the serene moonlight nights. The melancholy tone of her mysterious harp is no longer heard. Now lovers are married without getting from her either jewels or presents. Mariang Makiling has disappeared. Some blame the people of a certain town who not only refused to give her the customary white pullet but even failed to return the jewels and clothing borrowed. Others say that Mariang Makiling is offended because some landlords are trying to take half of the mountain. Inkstand and pen tray made, and used, by Rizal in Dapitan. He used it, too, in writing his last poem My Last Thought in Fort Santiago. A chronology of the life of José Rizal 1848, June 28. Rizal's parents married in Calamba, La Laguna, Francisco Rizal Mercado y Alejandra, born in Binan, April 18, 1818, and Teodora Morales Alonso Riolunda y Quintas, born in Sta Cruz, Manila, November 14, 1827. 1861, June 19 Rizal born, their 7th child. June 22 christened as José Protagio Rizal Mercado y Alonso Riolunda. 1870, age 9 in school at Binan under Master Justiniano Aquin Cruz. 1871, age 10 in Calamba Public School under Master Lucas Padua. 1872, June 10. Age 11 examined in San Juan de Letran College, Manila, which, during the Spanish time, as part of Sto. Tomas University, controlled entrance to all higher institutions. June 26 entered the Ateneo Municipal de Manila, then a public school, as a day scholar. 1875, June 14. Age 14 became a boarder in the Ateneo. 1876, March 23. Age 15 received the Bachelor of Arts, B.A., degree, with highest honors, from Ateneo de Manila. June entered Sto. Tomas University in Philosophy course. 1877, June. Age 16 matriculated in medical course. Won Liceo Artístico Literario Prize, in poetical competition for Indians and Mestizos, with poem to Philippine youth. November 29 awarded Diploma of Honorable Mention and Merit by Royal Economic Society of Friends of the Country, Amigos del País, for prize poem. 1880, April 23. age 19 received Liceo Artistico Literario Diploma of Honorable Mention for Allegory The Council of the Gods, in competition open to Spaniards, Mestizos, and Indians. Unjustly deprived of first prize. December 8 Operetta on the Banks of the Pasig produced. 1881 age 20 submitted winning wax model design for commemorative medal for Royal Economic Society of Friends of the Country Centennial. Wounded in the back for not saluting a Guardia Civil lieutenant whom he had not seen. His complaint was ignored by the authorities. Rizal at 22. From the first photo taken after his arrival in Spain. 1882, May 3. Age 21 secretly left Manila, with passport of a cousin, taking at Singapore a French mail steamer for Marseilles and entering Spain at Portbou by railroad. Money furnished by his brother, Paciano Mercado. June absence noted at Sto. Tomas University, which owned Calamba Estate. Rizal's father was compelled to prove that he had had no knowledge of his son's plan in order to hold the land on which he was the university's tenant. July, November a student in Barcelona. November 3 began studies in Madrid. 1885, June 19. Age 24 received degree of licentiate in medicine with honors from Central University of Madrid. Rizal at 24. The original photograph was taken in Madrid. 1886, June. Age 25 received degree of licentiate in philosophy, with honors and special mention in Latin, Greek, and Hebrew, from Central University of Madrid. Clinical assistant to Dr. L. de Weckert, a Paris oculist. Visited universities of Heidelberg, Leipzig, and Berlin. 1887, February 21. Age 26 finished novel Noli Me Tangere in Berlin. Traveled in Austria, Switzerland, and Italy. July 3 sailed from Marseilles. August 5 arrived in Manila. Traveled in nearby provinces with a Spanish lieutenant, detailed by the Governor-General, as escort. 1888, February sailed for Japan via Hong Kong. February 28, April 13. Age 27 a guest at Spanish legation, Tokyo, and traveling in Japan. Rizal at 26. From a photo taken in Switzerland. April, May traveling in the United States. May 24 in London, studying in the British Museum to edit Morga's 1609 Philippine History. 1889, March. Age 28 in Paris, publishing Morga's History. Published The Philippines a Century Hence in La Solidaridad, a Filipino fortnightly review, first of Barcelona and later of Madrid. 1890, February, July. Age 29 in Belgium and Holland, finishing El Filibusterismo, The Reign of Greed, which is the sequel to Noli Me Tangere. Published The Indolence of the Filipino in La Solidaridad. August 4 returned to Madrid to confer with countrymen on the Philippines situation, then constantly growing worse. Rizal at 28. From a group picture, taken in Paris, with the artist Luna's family. 1891, January 27 left Madrid for France. November. Age 30 arranging for a Filipino agricultural colony in British North Borneo. Practiced medicine in Hong Kong. 1892, June 26. Age 31 returned to Manila under Governor-General Despujal's safe conduct. Organized Mutual Aid Economic Society Liga Filipina. July 6 ordered deported to Dapitan, but the decree and charges were kept secret from him. Taught school and conducted a hospital during exile, patients coming from China coast ports for treatment. Fees thus earned were used to beautify the town. Arranged a water system and had the plaza lighted. 1896, August 1st. Age 35, left Dapitan en route to Spain as a volunteer surgeon for the Cuban yellow fever hospitals. Carried letters of recommendation from Governor-General Blanco. August 7, September 3 on Spanish cruiser Castillo in Manila Bay. Sailed for Spain on Spanish mail steamer and just after leaving port said was confined to cabin as a prisoner on cabled order from Manila. Governor-General Blanco's promotion had been purchased by Rizal's enemies to secure appointment of a Governor-General subservient to them, the Servil Polavieja. October 5, placed in Montjuic Castle dungeon on arrival in Barcelona and the same day re-embarked for Manila. Friends and countrymen in London by cable made an unsuccessful effort for a habeas corpus writ at Singapore. On arrival in Manila was placed in Fort Santiago dungeon. December 3, charged with treason, sedition, and forming illegal societies, the prosecution arguing that he was responsible for the deeds of those who read his writings. December 12, wrote poem My Last Farewell and concealed it in an alcohol cooking lamp, after appearing in a courtroom where the judges made no effort to check those who cried out for his death. A Paris portrait of Rizal which appears on the 2-centavo stamped envelope. It is the only profile among his known portraits. December 15, wrote an address to insurgent Filipinos to lay down their arms because their insurrection was at that time hopeless. Address not made public but added to the charges against him. December 26, formally condemned to death by Spanish court-martial. Pi y Margal, who had been president of the Spanish Republic, pleaded with the Prime Minister for Rizal's life, but the Queen Regent could not forgive his having referred in one of his writings to the murder by, and suicide of, her relative, Crown Prince Rudolph of Austria. December 30, married in Fort Santiago death cell to Josephine Bracken, Irish, the adopted daughter of a blind American who came to Dapitan for treatment. Age 35 years, 6 months, 11 days. Shot on the Luneta, Manila, at 7:30 a.m., and buried in a secret grave in Paco Cemetery. Entry of death made on back flyleaf of Paco Church Register, among suicides. 1897, January, commemorated by Spanish Freemasons who dedicated a tablet to his memory, in their Grand Lodge Hall in Madrid, as a martyr to liberty. 1898, August grave sought, immediately after the American capture of Manila, by Filipinos who placed over it, in Paco Cemetery, a cross inscribed simply December 30, 1896. Since his death his name had never been spoken by his countrymen, but all references had been to the dead, el difunto. December 30, memorial services held by Filipinos, and American soldiers on duty carried their arms reversed. 1911, June 19, birth semi-centennial observed in all public schools by act of Philippine legislature. 1912, December 30, ashes transferred to the Rizal Mausoleum on the Luneta with impressive public ceremonies. Rizal Mausoleum, Luneta, Manila. Here lies the body of José Rizal on the place of his execution, under a monument designed by the designer of the Swiss National Tel Monument. References: a reading list. Rizal, José the Monkey and the Tortoise. A Tagalog tale told in English and illustrated by Rizal. Manila, 1912. Elias and Salome. An unpublished chapter from the original Nalimi Tangeri manuscript. The whole truth. La verdad para todos. A defense of the Filipinos. By telephone, por telefono. A satire. The Philippines a century hence, Filipinas dentro de 100 años. A forecast of the future. The indolence of the Filipino, La indolencia de los Filipinos. An answer to criticism. My Last Thought and Other Poems. Translations by Charles Derbyshire and A. P. Ferguson. Mariang Makiling. A Folk Tale. These titles are in the Nalimi Tangeri Quarter-Centennial series, edited by Austin Craig. Translations are by Charles Derbyshire. Manila, 1912. An Eagle Flight, a Filipino novel. Adapted from Nalimi Tangeri, with a short sketch of Rizal's life. Anonymous translator. New York, 1900. Manuscript of Rizal's great novel, now in the Philippine Library. El Filibusterismo is the second part, or sequel, of the novel Nalimi Tangeri. Rizal's first novel told the Filipinos of their faults. This book warned Spain of the danger of losing her colony unless the colonial government became better. Filibusterer was the name given to Filipinos who wanted reforms in the government. House where El Filibusterismo was begun. This sketch, made in pencil, was enclosed in a letter from Los Banos to Professor Blumentritt. Friars and Filipinos. An abridged translation of Nalimi Tangeri by F. E. Gannett. New York, 1900. The Social Cancer. Charles Derbyshire's translation of Nalimi Tangeri. Manila and New York, 1912. The Reign of Greed. Charles Derbyshire's translation of El Filibusterismo. Manila and New York, 1912. Blumentritt, F. Life of José Rizal. Translated from the German by H. W. Bray. Singapore, 1898. Views of Dr. Rizal, the Filipino scholar, upon race differences. Translated from the German by R. L. Packard. Popular Science Monthly, Volume 61, July, 1902, pages 222 to 229. Halstead, Murat. The Story of the Philippines. Pages 190 to 201 give a translation of Rizal's The Vision of Friar Rodriguez, La Vision de Fray Rodriguez, by F. M. de Rivas. Chicago, 1898. Clifford, Sir Hugh. The Story of José Rizal, the Filipino. In Blackwood's Edinburgh Magazine, Volume 172, November, 1902, pages 620 to 638. Craig, Austin. Readings from Rizal. A series of selections from Rizal's novels, in Volume 1 of The Philippine Teacher. Manila, 1905. The Rizal Story in Pictures. A series of 21 postcards with authentic illustrations and explanations. Manila, 1908. The Story of José Rizal, the Greatest Man of the Brown Race. Manila, 1909. Lineage, Life, and Labors of José Rizal. Manila and Yonkers-on-Hudson, 1912. Particulars of the Philippines pre-Spanish past. Dr. Rizal's Ibn Bachatus Tawalizi. The northern part of the Philippines appears on pages 20 to 22. Manila, 1916. Craig F. Rizal, the Martyr Hero of the Philippines. An imaginative account, expanding the known facts, for youthful readers. In Philippine Education. Manila, 1913. Blair Robertson. The Philippine Islands 1493 to 1898. Rizal's annotations to Morga's 1609 History of the Philippines appear among the notes in volumes 15 and 16. Cleveland, Ohio, 1904. Brief sketches of Rizal's life and work may be found in every encyclopedia published since 1898. The modern histories of the Philippines have extended references to him, and the numerous recent works on the Philippines all attempt estimates of his influence upon his countrymen. Diploma of Merit won by José Rizal in a literary competition in honor of Spain's greatest writer, Cervantes, held in Manila in 1880. The Liceo Artístico Literario offered a gold ring as first prize, and the Economic Society of the Friends of the Country gave the winner a Diploma of Merit. Rizal's allegory, The Council of the Gods, was preferred by the judges, all Spaniards. But when the envelopes containing the contestants' names were opened, there was objection to giving first prize to a Filipino when prominent Spaniards had taken part in the contest. Rizal says that he was hissed off the stage when he appeared in answer to the reading of his name. Manila newspapers of that period dared not speak of the incident openly, but there were several veiled allusions to it. One writer sarcastically said that medical students should be forbidden to write poetry. The Council of the Gods, we gods and goddesses, met on Mount Olympus, find that the greatest three authors in the world's history are of equal merit. So in justice equal respect must be paid them. To Homer we award fame's trumpet, to Virgil the lyre of glory, and to Cervantes the laurel wreath of immortal honor. To the Philippine youth hold high the brow serene, O youth, where now you stand, let the bright sheen of your grace be seen, fair hope of my fatherland. Prize, and the first verse of the winning poem, won by Rizal at the age of 17 in a public competition open to Indians and mestizos. By these two names, the Spaniard called, and divided, the Filipinos. My last thought, farewell, beloved fatherland, thou sunny clime of ours, pearl of the Orient Ocean, our lost paradise. For thee my life I give, nor mourn its saddened hours, and were tea more bright, strewn less with thorns and more with flowers, for thee I still would give it, a welcome sacrifice. The alcohol lamp in which Rizal hid the poem, called My Last Thought, which he wrote in the night after he learned that he was to die. The original poem, whose ink shows the effects of the alcohol, is now in the Philippine Library. Philippine National Hymn written in Spanish by José Palma, music by I. Felipe. The versifier of the English translation prefers not to have his name appear. Hail, Philippines! Words by L. H. Theobald, music arranged from the Toreador's song in the opera Carmen Calafon. Availability: this ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at www.gutenberg.org. This ebook is produced by the online distributed proofreading team at www.pgdp.net. Encoding revision history March 3, 2015 started. External references: this Project Gutenberg ebook contains external references. These links may not work for you. Corrections: the following corrections have been applied to the text. Page source correction 1, 12, 25, 27, 29, 30, 30, 33, 46, 57, 60, 62, 62, 69, 100, 104, 106, 108, 110, 114, 118, 120, 121, 121, 123, 125, 125 not in source. 11, 101 Jose. End of the Project Gutenberg ebook. Rizal's own story of his life. Updated editions will replace the previous one. The old editions will be renamed. Creating the works from print editions not protected by U.S. copyright law means that no one owns a United States copyright in these works, so the Foundation, and you, can copy and distribute it in the United States without permission and without paying copyright royalties. Special rules, set forth in the General Terms of Use part of this license, apply to copying and distributing Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark concept and trademark. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark, and may not be used if you charge for an ebook, except by following the terms of the trademark license, including paying royalties for use of the Project Gutenberg trademark. If you do not charge anything for copies of this ebook, complying with the trademark license is very easy. You may use this ebook for nearly any purpose, such as creation of derivative works, reports, performances, and research. Project Gutenberg ebooks may be modified and printed and given away. You may do practically anything in the United States with ebooks not protected by U.S. copyright law. Redistribution is subject to the trademark license, especially commercial redistribution. Start. Full license. The full Project Gutenberg license. Please read this before you distribute or use this work to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark mission of promoting the free distribution of electronic works. By using or distributing this work, or any other work associated in any way with the phrase Project Gutenberg, you agree to comply with all the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark license available with this file or online at www.gutenberg.org/license. Section 1. General Terms of Use and Redistributing Project Gutenberg Trademark Electronic Works 1.a. By reading or using any part of this Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work, you indicate that you have read, understand, agree to and accept all the terms of this license and intellectual property, trademark/copyright, agreement. If you do not agree to abide by all the terms of this agreement, you must cease using and return or destroy all copies of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works in your possession. If you paid a fee for obtaining a copy of or access to a Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work and you do not agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement, you may obtain a refund from the person or entity to whom you paid the fee as set forth in paragraph 1.e.8. 1.b. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark. It may only be used on or associated in any way with an electronic work by people who agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement. There are a few things that you can do with most Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works even without complying with the full terms of this agreement. See paragraph 1.c below. There are a lot of things you can do with Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works if you follow the terms of this agreement and help preserve free future access to Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works. See paragraph 1.e below. 1.c. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the foundation or PGLOF, owns a compilation copyright in the collection of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works. Nearly all the individual works in the collection are in the public domain in the United States. If an individual work is unprotected by copyright law in the United States and you are located in the United States, we do not claim a right to prevent you from copying, distributing, performing, displaying, or creating derivative works based on the work as long as all references to Project Gutenberg are removed. Of course, we hope that you will support the Project Gutenberg trademark mission of promoting free access to electronic works by freely sharing Project Gutenberg trademark works in compliance with the terms of this agreement for keeping the Project Gutenberg trademark name associated with the work. You can easily comply with the terms of this agreement by keeping this work in the same format with its attached full Project Gutenberg trademark license when you share it without charge with others. 1.d. The copyright laws of the place where you are located also govern what you can do with this work. Copyright laws in most countries are in a constant state of change. If you are outside the United States, check the laws of your country in addition to the terms of this agreement before downloading, copying, displaying, performing, distributing or creating derivative works based on this work or any other Project Gutenberg trademark work. The Foundation makes no representations concerning the copyright status of any work in any country other than the United States. 1.e. Unless you have removed all references to Project Gutenberg, 1.e.1. The following sentence, with active links to, or other immediate access to, the full Project Gutenberg trademark license must appear prominently whenever any copy of a Project Gutenberg trademark work, any work on which the phrase Project Gutenberg appears, or with which the phrase Project Gutenberg is associated, is accessed, displayed, performed, viewed, copied or distributed. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, you will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. 1.e.2 If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work is derived from texts not protected by U.S. copyright law, does not contain a notice indicating that it is posted with permission of the copyright holder, the work can be copied and distributed to anyone in the United States without paying any fees or charges. If you are redistributing or providing access to a work with the phrase Project Gutenberg associated with or appearing on the work, you must comply either with the requirements of paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 or obtain permission for the use of the work and the Project Gutenberg trademark as set forth in paragraphs 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.3 If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work is posted with the permission of the copyright holder, your use and distribution must comply with both paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 and any additional terms imposed by the copyright holder. Additional terms will be linked to the Project Gutenberg trademark license for all works posted with the permission of the copyright holder found at the beginning of this work. 1.e.4 Do not unlink or detach or remove the full Project Gutenberg trademark license terms from this work, or any files containing a part of this work or any other work associated with Project Gutenberg trademark. 1.e.5 Do not copy, display, perform, distribute or redistribute this electronic work, or any part of this electronic work, without prominently displaying the sentence set forth in paragraph 1.e.1 with active links or immediate access to the full terms of the Project Gutenberg trademark license. 1.e.6 You may convert to and distribute this work in any binary, compressed, marked up, non-proprietary or proprietary form, including any word processing or hypertext form. However, if you provide access to or distribute copies of a Project Gutenberg trademark work in a format other than plain vanilla ASCII or other format used in the official version posted on the official Project Gutenberg trademark website, www.gutenberg.org, you must, at no additional cost, fee, or expense to the user, provide a copy, a means of exporting a copy, or a means of obtaining a copy upon request, of the work in its original plain vanilla ASCII or other form. Any alternate format must include the full Project Gutenberg trademark license as specified in paragraph 1.e.1. 1.e.7 Do not charge a fee for access to, viewing, displaying, performing, copying or distributing any Project Gutenberg trademark works unless you comply with paragraph 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.8 You may charge a reasonable fee for copies of or providing access to or distributing Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works provided that, you pay a royalty fee of 20% of the gross profits you derive from the use of Project Gutenberg trademark works calculated using the method you already use to calculate your applicable taxes. The fee is owed to the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark, but he has agreed to donate royalties under this paragraph to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Royalty payments must be paid within 60 days following each date on which you prepare, or are legally required to prepare, your periodic tax returns. Royalty payments should be clearly marked as such and sent to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation at the address specified in Section 4, Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. You provide a full refund of any money paid by a user who notifies you in writing, or by email, within 30 days of receipt that he does not agree to the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark license. You must require such a user to return or destroy all copies of the works possessed in a physical medium and discontinue all use of and all access to other copies of Project Gutenberg trademark works. You provide, in accordance with paragraph 1.f.3, a full refund of any money paid for a work or a replacement copy, if a defect in the electronic work is discovered and reported to you within 90 days of receipt of the work. You comply with all other terms of this agreement for free distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark works. 1.e.9. If you wish to charge a fee or distribute a Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work or group of works on different terms than are set forth in this agreement, you must obtain permission in writing from the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the manager of the Project Gutenberg trademark. Contact the Foundation as set forth in Section 3 below. 1.f.1.f.1. Project Gutenberg volunteers and employees expend considerable effort to identify, do copyright research on, transcribe and proofread works not protected by U.S. copyright law in creating the Project Gutenberg trademark collection. Despite these efforts, Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works, and the medium on which they may be stored, may contain defects, such as, but not limited to, incomplete, inaccurate or corrupt data, transcription errors, a copyright or other intellectual property infringement, a defective or damaged disk or other medium, a computer virus, or computer codes that damage or cannot be read by your equipment. 1.f.2. Limited warranty, disclaimer of damages, except for the right of replacement or refund described in paragraph 1.f.3, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark, and any other party distributing a Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work under this agreement, disclaim all liability to you for damages, costs, and expenses, including legal fees. You agree that you have no remedies for negligence, strict liability, breach of warranty or breach of contract except those provided in paragraph 1.f.3. You agree that the Foundation, the trademark owner, and any distributor under this agreement will not be liable to you for actual, direct, indirect, consequential, punitive, or incidental damages even if you give notice of the possibility of such damage. 1.f.3. Limited right of replacement or refund. If you discover a defect in this electronic work within 90 days of receiving it, you can receive a refund of the money, if any, you paid for it by sending a written explanation to the person you received the work from. If you received the work on a physical medium, you must return the medium with your written explanation. The person or entity that provided you with the defective work may elect to provide a replacement copy in lieu of a refund. If you received the work electronically, the person or entity providing it to you may choose to give you a second opportunity to receive the work electronically in lieu of a refund. If the second copy is also defective, you may demand a refund in writing without further opportunities to fix the problem. 1.f.4. Except for the limited right of replacement or refund set forth in paragraph 1.f.3, this work is provided to you as is, with no other warranties of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to warranties of merchantability or fitness for any purpose. 1.f.5. Some states do not allow disclaimers of certain implied warranties or the exclusion or limitation of certain types of damages. If any disclaimer or limitation set forth in this agreement violates the law of the state applicable to this agreement, the agreement shall be interpreted to make the maximum disclaimer or limitation permitted by the applicable state law. The invalidity or unenforceability of any provision of this agreement shall not void the remaining provisions. 1.f.6 Indemnity. You agree to indemnify and hold the foundation, the trademark owner, any agent or employee of the foundation, anyone providing copies of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works in accordance with this agreement, and any volunteers associated with the production, promotion, and distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works, harmless from all liability, costs, and expenses, including legal fees, that arise directly or indirectly from any of the following which you do or cause to occur. A. Distribution of this or any Project Gutenberg trademark work. B. Alteration, modification, or additions or deletions to any Project Gutenberg trademark work, and c. Any defect you cause. Section 2. Information about the mission of Project Gutenberg trademark. Project Gutenberg trademark is synonymous with the free distribution of electronic works in formats readable by the widest variety of computers, including obsolete, old, middle-aged, and new computers. It exists because of the efforts of hundreds of volunteers and donations from people in all walks of life. Volunteers and financial support to provide volunteers with the assistance they need are critical to reaching Project Gutenberg trademark's goals and ensuring that the Project Gutenberg trademark collection will remain freely available for generations to come. In 2001, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation was created to provide a secure and permanent future for Project Gutenberg trademark and future generations. To learn more about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation and how your efforts and donations can help, see sections 3 and 4 and the Foundation information page at www.gutenberg.org. Section 3. Information about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation is a non-profit 501(c)(3) educational corporation organized under the laws of the state of Mississippi and granted tax-exempt status by the Internal Revenue Service. The Foundation's IN or federal tax identification number is 64-6221541. Contributions to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation are tax-deductible to the full extent permitted by U.S. federal laws and your state's laws. The Foundation's business office is located at 809 North 1500 West, Salt Lake City, Utah 841-16808-596-1887. Email contact links and up-to-date contact information can be found at the Foundation's website and official page at www.gutenberg.org/contact. Section 4. Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Project Gutenberg trademark depends upon and cannot survive without widespread public support and donations to carry out its mission of increasing the number of public domain and licensed works that can be freely distributed in machine-readable form accessible by the widest array of equipment, including outdated equipment. Many small donations, $1 to $5,000, are particularly important to maintaining tax-exempt status with the IRS. The Foundation is committed to complying with the laws regulating charities and charitable donations in all 50 states of the United States. Compliance requirements are not uniform and it takes a considerable effort, much paperwork, and many fees to meet and keep up with these requirements. We do not solicit donations in locations where we have not received written confirmation of compliance. To send donations or determine the status of compliance for any particular state, visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. While we cannot and do not solicit contributions from states where we have not met the solicitation requirements, we know of no prohibition against accepting unsolicited donations from donors in such states who approach us with offers to donate. International donations are gratefully accepted, but we cannot make any statements concerning tax treatment of donations received from outside the United States. U.S. laws alone swamp our small staff. Please check the Project Gutenberg web pages for current donation methods and addresses. Donations are accepted in a number of other ways, including checks, online payments, and credit card donations. To donate, please visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. Section 5. General information about Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works. Professor Michael S. Hart was the originator of the Project Gutenberg trademark concept of a library of electronic works that could be freely shared with anyone. For 40 years, he produced and distributed Project Gutenberg trademark ebooks with only a loose network of volunteer support. Project Gutenberg trademark ebooks are often created from several printed editions, all of which are confirmed as not protected by copyright in the US unless a copyright notice is included. Thus, we do not necessarily keep ebooks in compliance with any particular paper edition. Most people start at our website, which has the main PG search facility, www.gutenberg.org. This website includes information about Project Gutenberg trademark, including how to make donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, how to help produce our new ebooks, and how to subscribe to our email newsletter to hear about new ebooks. Rizal's Hymn to Labor. Rizal's Maria Clara's Lullaby. Acknowledgements. Illustrations. Contents. Rizal's own story. My boyhood. Chapter I. My birth and earliest years in Calamba. Chapter 2. My schooling in Binan. Chapter 3. My daily life in Binan. Chapter 4. The injustice done my mother. Chapter V. A student in Manila. My first reading lesson. My childhood impressions. The Spanish schools of my boyhood. The turkey that caused the Calamba land trouble from Japan to England across America. My deportation to Dapitan. Advice to a nephew. Filipino proverbs. Filipino puzzles. Rizal's Don'ts. Hymn to Labor. Memory gems from Rizal's writings. Marayang Makiling. A chronology of the life of José Rizal. References. A reading list. Diploma of Merit won by José Rizal. Philippine National Hymn. Hail, Philippines. Colophon. Availability. Encoding. Revision. History. External references. Corrections. The full Project Gutenberg license.